In the last section, we spoke a little bit about how JavaScript executes code. Remember, there's no concept of pausing or sleeping or anything like that inside of JavaScript. So to deal with long-running processes, we need some ability to figure out when the process finishes and only then run some snippet of code. So with that in mind, we're now going to talk a little bit more about promises and how they solve this problem. As you might imagine, promises are exactly how we're going to solve this issue of long-running processes or requests. So we're going to pivot just a little bit and talk about terminology about promises, and then tie this all back into a practical coding example. So in this diagram, we've got this promise sitting on the left-hand side. A promise exists in three possible states: unresolved, resolved, and rejected. Okay? By default, a promise exists in an unresolved state. Unresolved means we just made the promise and we are waiting for something to happen. We're waiting for our long-running AJAX request or maybe some other event to occur. So this is just when we're kind of sitting around waiting for something to occur. Once that something actually happens, whatever it might be, once whatever we're waiting for actually occurs and takes place, our promise enters one of the other two states, either resolved or rejected. When a promise enters the resolved state, it means that our long-running process finished and everything related to it went okay. So this is kind of how we handle errors or successes around promises or these long-running processes. So in a resolved state, it means, hey, thumbs up, everything is fantastic, everything worked out okay. And in the case of when something went bad, like maybe our network request failed to actually execute, maybe we don't have an internet connection or something like that, our promise instead enters the rejected state. So again, three states. We start off as unresolved, and then we can either enter into being resolved or rejected after our promise has actually, whatever we're waiting for has occurred. Now let's look at one more diagram and then work on a little bit of coding examples. Remember, the whole point of promises is to run some amount of code, and then when a long-running process, like say an AJAX request is complete, we need some method of registering a callback function to be executed when the process is complete. So this is the part where we say, okay, our long-running process is done, fantastic, now run this code, the code in which everything went okay. So that's where these promise statuses come into play, along with two new terms that I'm going to introduce right now, then and catch. So we're now up to a total of 5 terms. We've got unresolved, resolved, rejected, and then and catch. After a promise is created, we can register callback functions with either then or catch. And then and catch are properties that sit on top of our promise object. When a promise status gets updated to resolved or rejected, all of the functions that we register with then or catch are executed as well. So they get automatically called. Okay, so this section, and probably the last one for it, a lot of fancy terminology, a lot of lecturing, stuff that probably doesn't make sense just yet. The whole idea of this lecture and the one right before it was that I just want to kind of get these terms inside of your head. I just want to get you to kind of thinking about them. So let's continue the next section. We're going to start writing some real code, and we'll see the purpose of then and catch. So I'll see you in the next section.